Hello everyone, and welcome to video number 10 of the Space Blaster 84 tutorial series. In this tutorial we are going to set up the rocks in our scenes, and we will find out how to randomly create large, small, and medium rocks. And let's get started. So let's fire up Space Blasters 84 and let's start creating our new scene. So the first thing we need to do is click on the 2D tab, maybe move it around a little bit. We need to create a new node, just a root node. So let's call this rock root. Now we need a few things to get started here, right? If we're going to be dealing with physics, we need a rigid body 2D, we need a sprite so that we can see it in a collision shape 2D. So select rock root. We aren't going to be dealing with the controls, we'll be in the blue 2D section. We need a rigid body 2D. We also need to add a sprite, so make sure your rigid body 2D is selected, add a sprite, and again make sure rigid body 2D is selected, and let's create a collision shape 2D node. Collision shape 2D node right here. So now we have everything we need to have the behavior of collisions and physics. Let's create a new folder in the Space Blasters 84 projects folder. Let's create a new folder called Rocks. And then inside that folder, let's create a folder called Image. And go back here and rename that to Image, that we have a place for the rock images. Okay, so now let's back up to the main folder so that we can go to the source and the rock section. And let's unzip the asteroids project. We'll extract it here. Creates the asteroids folder, and let's just grab for now, let's just grab a large image for the rocks, and you can just pick out whichever color you want in all of these. I'm just going to grab this one here. We will copy that one and we'll go back to our Space Blasters 84 folder, go into our rocks folder that we created and our image folder, and we'll paste in the rock that I just grabbed. And I'm going to just rename this to L for my large rock. Okay, I think we're done with that part of it. So now that we have an image, let's load it up here so that we can see it. Let's click on Sprite over here in the inspector where it says texture. Let's load up our sprite, go to our rocks folder, image, and there's our large rock. There you go. Now we can see something at least. Now we need to have a collision area as well, right? So let's click on the collision shape 2D. Let's go over to the shape. Let's click the down arrow and create a new circle shape 2D. And you'll see that it actually did create it here. It's just small. So in order to make that larger, we need to click on the right arrow here, and you'll see the radius here. So let's pick a size that will pretty much cover the whole asteroid. Okay, let's try a value of 80 here. And let's click on the move arrows and just move it slightly so that it better fits the asteroid PNG, which that's pretty good. It's close enough. Okay, so that's really all we need to set up for us to have the physics and the collision. So let's save this scene. And let's save it in the rocks folder. And let's call it, let's just call it Rock L for large. Now if we play this, we should see the rock start to fall from the very top, and that's exactly what we see. So far so good. We've got this set up pretty much the way we want it, but we do need the rock to have certain behavior. So let's add a script to the rigid body 2D node here. Let's create a new script, and we'll call that RockL as well. .gd. Click Create. Creates the shell for us. Now this rock's going to have some behavior to it. It's going to know its durability. That is, how many times do I have to hit it with a laser before it actually gets destroyed. So that variable we're going to call durability. And we're going to make that equal to 3. So I have to hit it 3 times with the laser to actually blow it up. We need another variable that's going to be the points when we blow up this particular asteroid, and we're going to set that to 30 points. We need to use the fixed process, right? Because we're dealing with physics, so we need to set the fixed process to true. We also want to set its initial position, so we want to set the position of the rigid body 2D itself equal to expects a vector 2. And we want to create a random range that when the rock spawns, it will put the position at a visible spectrum from about here to about here on our game screen. Okay, so we can do that in the script by using a random range. And that random range in this particular case for our game will be from 50 to 1000. And we also want to set it with a Y value of -50. Now we're doing that because we want, when we spawn the rock, we don't want to spawn it on the screen so that you see it being spawned. We're going to spawn it off the top of the screen and have it drop down like a regular asteroid would. So you won't see the spawn, you'll just see the rock coming down from the top. Okay. We also want to set some angular velocity, and why would we want to do that? Well, if you click, let's make sure we've saved our scene. I'm pretty sure we have, but let's save the scene. Yeah, okay, we've already saved it. So let's play it, and when we play it, you'll see that it moves it to that random range, and it spawns it up here, and it starts real slow and then gain speed as it falls due to the physics of the rigid body 2D. But what we want is we want it to spawn and immediately be going almost full speed. We need to apply an impulse to the asteroid or the rock so that it's at full speed as soon as it spawns. So we'll apply an impulse to the rock. And we don't want to apply an impulse in the X direction. We only want to apply it in the Y direction. And the very first setting is going to be where is the rigid body at this moment. So we will use the git pos to find out where I am at this point of the game. So that's where I currently am, and I want to apply an impulse of a vector 2. And remember, I don't want to apply the impulse in the x direction, so in the x direction impulse will be 0, and the y direction impulse in this case is going to be 600. So when I create a rock, you should see it automatically going full speed when I press play, and you do. You see it's pretty much going full speed already. So that's great, but rocks that just fall straight down and have no rotation are pretty boring, so let's apply an angular velocity to the rock when it is created. So we'll do set angular velocity, and it expects a float to represent the angular velocity. And we're going to set a random range because we don't want all of the asteroids to have the same rotational speed. So we'll set it from a -5 to a +5. So when I create a rock, it will have a random position. We'll set an impulse so that it's automatically going in the y direction at full speed from top to bottom, and we'll set a random angular velocity of -5 to +5. So now when I press play, you'll see that the rock starts to spin. And each time I create or instantiate another rock, it will have a random location and a random rotation. So that's exactly what I need for the behavior. So we need to create the behavior for the fixed process. So let's do that. Function fixed process with the delta. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about global. It's a property that you can set globally, and all of your scenes can interact with that global property. So I've decided that that's how I'm going to basically have each scene aware of when the game starts, when a level is ending, and when the score needs to be increased. So I'm going to be using global parameters for handling all of that. I was going to use methods and passing methods back and forth, but I found out that that's quickly going to be too difficult for a beginner tutorial. So we're just going to use globals. So we're going to check to see if we have a global called game running. If we have global .has game running, what is the string to represent the parameter? So if I have game running, that is somebody set game running somewhere in some scene, then I want to check it. So if globals get, I'm going to get what the value is at this moment in time, and if game running is false, well, what do I want to do? I want to basically clear the rock node from the entire game, right? So I'm going to get my root node here. And I'm going to do a queue free. So if the game is not running, the game running is false, then I want to get my rock root node and basically delete everything from the tree, or delete everything from the game. That's one thing I want to do. Then I want to check to see if my current position in the y direction is greater than my screen area or my game area, which in this case is 1920, right? So if I've basically gone off the screen, the rock has gone off the screen, I want to do the same thing. I want to make sure that I delete it. So I'm going to get the node, my root node here, and I'm going to do a queue free. And there's another case, right, that if my durability equals 0 at some point, then my rock has been destroyed. So we're going to check to see if my durability equals 0. Because if my durability equals 0, then I also need to end the game. But there's a few things that I want to have happen if my rock has been destroyed. If it's been destroyed, I want to check to see if there's a global parameter called game score. And if I do have that, I'm going to basically change the value of my game score. I'm going to set my game score to game score, whatever the current game score is. And check out and see what my current game score is, because the game is running, right? So the score could be anything. So I'm going to check what it currently is. And I'm going to add the points value. That is, I'm going to check my current game score, and the points value for this particular rock is 30 points. So whatever the game score is, I'm going to add, in this case, 30 points to it. And then, of course, at this point, I'm all done with this rock, so I want to remove it from the scene. So at this point, I want to do the queue free on it. I want to get rid of it. And that's basically the only behavior that I need for all of my rocks. I've got my durability, it equals 3, so it has to be hit 3 times with a laser. I've got my points at 30, so when it's destroyed, I can actually use the point value to increase my score. I set fixed process to true so that I can go through this many times. Set the position at -50 in the Y direction, so it's outside the screen. I apply an impulse so that it's going full speed as soon as it's created, and I set a random angular velocity of -5 to 5 to give some rotation to the rock itself. Then in the fixed process behavior, I'm checking to see if I have a global parameter called game running. If I do have game running, I'm checking to see if it's false. If it's false, I want to remove all rocks from the scene. So it's going to remove itself from the scene. If it's past the game screen of 1920, I want it to remove it from the screen. And if the durability is 0, that is, it's been hit 3 times, then I want it removed from the screen after I've increased the game score with the point values of this particular rock. And I want to remove it with the queue free. So there you have it. That's the entire behavior that you need for your rocks in the game. This is for the large rock. So now what we need to do is we need to create another scene for the medium rock and the small rock. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's save this scene. And let's do this. Let's click Save Scene As. Now that we have the large rock, let's save this scene as, we'll save it as Rock M for the medium scene, and we'll click Save. Okay, So now what we're doing is we just basically copied it, and we need to modify the image and the collision area so that it represents the medium size asteroid, right? So let's click on the sprite. Let's click on the texture, and actually I don't think we've loaded in the medium and the small. Let me click on this and go into rocks and image. No, we only grabbed the large. So now we need to go back, open a browser or file browser, go back to our scene here, and projects, Space Blasters 84, and our source. We need to pull in our rocks a medium asteroid. So let's go to the medium folder, and let's pull in what one looks good. Yeah, I'm just going to stick with this one. So let's copy that. Go back to the Space Blasters 84 folder, rocks, image. Let's drop that in here. Let's rename it to M so that we know it's the medium rock. And we need to do the same thing for the small. Go back to your Space Blasters project folder, source, rocks, asteroids, small. And let's pick this one. Copy. Again, go back to your Space Blasters project folder, your rocks, your images, and paste it in here. So now you've got basically all the images that you need. And let's rename that to S for small. So now we have a large, medium, and a small rock. Okay, we're done with the file browser. You can get rid of that. So let's back up out of here and then go back into image, and you should see all three. There we go. So let's pick the medium rock here. And you'll see that the medium rock in this case is quite a bit smaller than the large rock, and that's not really perfect for our needs. So we need to size this up just a little bit. So with the sprite selected, let's go down to scale, and let's scale that to 1.2 and see. No, okay, let's try 1.5 here. I think that'll be good. And we'll do a 1.5 here in the scale for the image. And that looks pretty good. That's a little bit about halfway, 50% smaller than the large rock. So that's okay for me. If you want to change it to a different value, go ahead. Now we also have to change the collision shape to match that. So again, click on collision shape, go over here to your little arrow, and our radius has got to be changed to, let's try 40. And that looks like it might be pretty good. I'm zooming in. Let me add my key monitor in here. I forgot to start that up at the beginning so you can see what I'm typing and pressing here. So let's, that looks pretty good. Let's click the arrows here and move it a little. And it looks like I can size it up a little bit more. So let's try 42. Nope. Let's try 45. That looks pretty good. I'm going to live with that. It pretty much covers the whole thing. So all right. So now we've got the rock medium scene. We have created the medium sprite and the medium collision area. What we need to do, though, is we currently, if I click here on the script, we currently are still tied to the large rock script, which is for 30 points. And we don't want to be tied to this. But let's do this. Let's copy this with a Control-C. Select it all and do a Control-C to copy it. And let's click back on Rigid Body 2D. And when you click on Rigid Body 2D, if you go to the inspector and then all the way down to the bottom, this is how you can clear a script from a node. Down here at the bottom where it says script, you can hit this. You can see it's tied to the rock L script. Well, we want to clear that. So let's clear that. So it's not tied to any script whatsoever. And you see that here now. And with it's still selected, let's click Create a New Script. And we already have rock L, so let's change this to rock M for medium. Click Save and Create. And let's highlight all this, delete it, and let's just Control V to paste the copied code from the large rock. And we're going to change the durability for the medium rock to 2. We want it to get hit twice with a laser. And we're going to give somebody 20 points when they blow up a medium laser. But here's the great thing. All the rest of the behavior is the same. We don't need to change it at all. So we can just keep it that way. So let's do a file save to save the medium script, and a scene save scene to save the medium scene, rock medium scene. And let's play it and just make sure that it's good to go. And yes, our rock spawns and it's got a rotation. So good. Now we need to do the same thing for the small rock. So let's do a save scene as. Let's change it to rock S. Click save. Now we need to load in the small rock sprite. So make sure your sprite is selected. Down arrow, load, small. And that's a good size. We're not going to mess with that. And let's click on the collision shape 2D and match the size of our image. Hit the arrow here and change the radius. Let's try 20. I'm not really sure how small that is. A little bit larger than that. Let's try 25. And let's make sure that our cross is selected here, and let's move that over. That's a little bit large. I think I'm going to change that to 23. There you go. Get it a little bit tighter to the image itself, and I'm okay with that. So again, if we look at the script that's tied to this rock small scene, we see that it's the rock medium script. So we need to change that, right? It's probably still in our buffers, but let's make sure that we've got it. Select it all, do a Control C to copy, and then let's click on the 2D tab, make sure rigid body is selected, go into the inspector down to the bottom where it says script. Let's clear the script so it doesn't have any script at all. Let's go back up here and create a new script, and we'll name this one Rock S for small, and we'll click save and create. Highlight all this, press delete, do a Control V to paste in what we've got in our buffer, and we need to change the durability to 1. Only one laser hit to kill a small rock, and we're going to give it 10 points. Let's do a save to save the rock small script, and let's do a scene save to save the rock small scene. And there you go. If I press play, we got the tiny rock now, so it's fallen down. So now we have all of the pieces as far as we have a large rock, a medium rock, and a small rock. So how do we spawn a large, small, or medium rock based on some random value? Well, we need to create another scene in order to do that. So let's go ahead and do that. So now that we have all of the pieces, let's go ahead and let's close a bunch of this so that nobody gets confused. This may be different in your version of Godot if you're not using the alpha version that I'm using. So let's close the scene as well. There you go. So that we don't have anything loaded. Now let's create a new scene, and let's create a root, and we're just going to call this add a node, and we're just going to call this rock root as well. And the only node that we need in this scene is a timer node, because we want to generate the rocks based on some timed value. So let's go ahead and grab the timer node, and I believe the timer node is down near the bottom. Yep, right there, down near the bottom. So the timer node is pretty cool because you can do a few things with it, and what we're going to do is basically have it every time the timer runs out, we're going to generate a rock. We'll have the timer continue to run over and over, basically triggering every time that the timer runs down to 0. We want the timer to auto start, so when we actually start the game, we want the timer to start running. We want it to basically run for a half a second. So we'll put 0.5 here for the time value. And we'll select rock root, and we need to create a script for some behavior for it to interact with the timer and pick the rocks as we go along. And I'm going to click Create Script here. I'm going to click Path, make sure it's in the rocks directory, which it is. And this script, we are going to just call it rock.gd. And we'll click Save. We'll click Create. Okay, so I'm going to copy some code that I've already created because I don't want to slow down this tutorial any longer than I already have. So let's paste this in here, and we'll just basically run through. I am going to delete this function here, and we'll add that a little bit later so that you can see how the timer function methods get added into the scene. But the script is going to have 3 variables, and those 3 variables will preload the large rock, the medium rock, and the small rock scenes and assign them to variables so that we can create new instances of these scenes in the code a little bit later. We also have the create rock variable. We're going to set it to false because we don't want to create rocks when the game first starts. We've got our ready function where we're going to set the process to true. Now we're not using the fixed process here because we aren't dealing with any physics in this particular scene. All it's going to be responsible for is instantiating the rock scenes and making sure that they get started. So we're just going to use the regular set process. We also are going to be using the global parameter, or checking for the global parameter game running to see if it's true. And if it's not true, we're going to set it to true for now, just so that we can run all of our rock scenes and actually make sure that everything's good. We'll remove this later after we've tested the functionality of all of our rock scenes and make sure everything works. All right, so we've got the process function here, and with this we're going to see if we have been tasked to create a rock. So if the variable create rock is true, then we're going to basically grab a random number here. And if the range will be from 0 to 3, floating point value of 0 to 3. So if the number is less than or equal to 1, that is, it's 0.01 to 1.0, then we're going to create a new rock, and that new rock will be a large rock. We need to, as you've seen in some other cases, add the child to our scene and set an owner. And we don't need to print out large rock. That was for some testing purposes, but we don't need that any longer. You can either delete that line or comment it out. So if it's less than 1, then we're going to create a large rock. Else if, that is, it isn't less than 1, we're going to check to see if it's less than 2. Or less than or equal to 2. At this point, if it is less than or equal to 2, then we're going to create a new medium rock and add the child and set the owner. And if it isn't either of these two cases, then we're going to check to see if the number is less than 3. If the number is less than 3, then we'll create a small rock instance and add the child and set a new owner. And of course, now that we've created the rock, we want to set the create rock variable to false so that it's ready to go again. But what's going to actually change the create rock to true? Well, we're going to basically create a rock every time the timer reaches 0. Well, how do I tie this timer node into the script here in my rock root? Well, if you click on your timer node, there's a little plug up here, and it's basically where you edit node connections for your different nodes. So if you click on here with the timer selected, you'll actually see a timeout definition here. So if you click on that timeout and you click down here the connect button, you'll see this pop up. And basically it's saying, okay, well, where do you want me to connect this method? Where do you want this method connected? I want it connected to the rock root. So select the rock root, and it's going to create a new method for you called onTimerTimeout, and just click connect. And what you'll see what will happen is in your rock root script, it's created a new function for you already, and that function is onTimerTimeout. So what did we set the timer for? We set it for a half a second. So every half a second, it's going to call this method onTimerTimeout. Right now there's no code in there, so we have to put some code in here to tell it to actually do something. So what we're going to place in here is some code that I've already written, and I'm going to make sure that it's where it needs to be here. We're going to check to see if the game is still running. If the timer hits its timeout, it's going to check to see if the game is still running. If the game is still running, well, then I want you to create a rock. So I say create rock equals true. Once the variable is true, of course, it's going to create a rock based on a random value. So keep my fingers crossed if we've done everything correctly and we save the scene, right? We need to save the scene. And we'll save this in the rocks folder. And we'll just call this rock, which is fine. Rock scene. Click save. So now if I run this script, I hope I see, yep, there's a few small rocks, there's a medium rock, a large rock, and you see that they're being spawned based on our random value that we created in the large, medium, and small rock scenes. The impulse is being applied because you can see they're going at full speed, and our rotation of -5 to +5, you see that that's also being implemented as well. So we have all the behavior that we expected for our rock scenes. And that's going to be it for this video. And in the next video, we'll start tying all these pieces together so that when your ship fires the lasers and it hits the rocks, it actually is going to start destroying them and adding points, okay? So thanks for sticking with me. And if you like what I'm doing, click the like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.